Hey everybody, it's Eric from EPAutos.com, your libertarian car guy. I wanted to talk about something today that has very little to do with cars, except perhaps peripherally, which is this business that Trump is using the National Guard to patrol cities, first DC and apparently next Chicago. And I know that a lot of people on the conservative side are okay with this, because they like law and order. And I certainly understand people who are worried about thugs running amok in cities and not being able to go outside, and all of those things, absolutely legitimate. But the worrisome thing is the precedent that's being set here, and I'm going to draw just one example to try to make the point. Some of you might remember the Boston Marathon bombing. It goes back a number of years. As far as I can tell, that was the very first time when an entire city was put on what they called lockdown. We've gotten used to using that term now too. That used to be a term that applied specifically to people who were in prison, i.e. criminals. Criminals got locked down. There'd be a fight, somebody would get shanked, and the warden would say, lock it down, and all the prisoners would have to go to their cells, and the bars would clank shut, and they would do that to restore order within the prison. Well, the Boston Marathon bombing came along, and these two guys, they blew up some bombs in the Boston Marathon, and a number of people were hurt and killed. The point is that they used that as the pretext to lock people within their own homes, and people got used to that. And this is before COVID, so it set the precedent for COVID, I think, in a lot of ways, in that this sort of stuff works that way. You do a thing once, and people don't object to it or even approve of it because they think that in the moment that this is something that's necessary, that's going to keep them safe. And then all of a sudden you start getting more of it, and it becomes used more and more in situations where it's just over the top and not justified by any reasonable criteria. And you get back to this Boston Marathon bombing. I mean, think about it. If you have some guys running around thugs, nobody wants to go outside and be in the line of fire between the thugs. Most people will just stay in their houses anyway. But this idea that the government can come by with bullhorns and order you to stay in your house, what gives them the right to do that? I think it's an important question. You're supposed to be a free person, meaning free to make your own decisions, and if you want to walk outside of your own house onto your own lawn, you ought to be able to do that. Just like if you wanted to walk into a store during COVID and the store owner was okay with you doing that without either of you wearing a mask, well, you should have been free to do that. Those who didn't want to do it, who felt that that was as unsafe and constituted a risk, well, nobody was forcing them to go in the store. They didn't have to. So, what was the skin off of their nose, as the saying goes? Anyway, so now we've got this business of soldiers patrolling the streets of our cities. And, soldiers, increasingly they're indistinguishable from cops. Cops seem to think they're soldiers. They even refer to us as civilians, as if they were in the military. They dress like military people. They've got the BDUs, they've got the high-powered weaponry, they've got the body armor, the whole look now. It's no longer Ponch and John in short-sleeved shirts and carrying a 38 or even a 357 revolver on the hip any longer. They look like they're ready to go storm Fallujah, as has been observed. Anyway, the military operates by an entirely different set of rules than civilian police operate by. They're bound by civilian laws. The military, on the other hand, is not. And, it doesn't make me happy to see this, because I think people are getting used to the idea of seeing troops on the street, and it has just a very third world vibe to me. I've been to the third world. I've been to countries south of the border, and that sort of a thing is common there. And I remember the first time I went there, and this was in Mexico. As a kid, I went there because I have family. My uncle used to live in Mexico. And I saw these guys, with their automatic rifles and their kit and everything walking the streets. And I was like, wow, man, look at that. Because you never saw something like that in America. Now we're beginning to see it in America. And it seems to me it's something that's troubling, for the precedent that's being set, for the way people are getting used to it. And sure, yeah, those soldiers are nice guys. They're friendly for now. But, ultimately, they take orders from the people higher up the chain of command, and they don't answer to you and me, John Q. Public. Not that cops do either, but far less so when it comes to soldiers, particularly if the situation devolves into martial law. You know, I mean, it would be so easy, wouldn't it? Turnkey almost, to declare martial law when the military is already set up in the cities and people are already used to seeing it. So, you know, just some thoughts for today. More over at epautos.com, the web's best libertarian gearhead site. I hope you'll swing by and join the, as they say, conversation. We actually do have a free speech zone at EP Autos, meaning we don't charge you to speak, and we certainly don't charge you for reach. You can just sign, you know, put your name in and post a comment, and it'll be seen by everybody, just the same as my comments or anybody else's. So I hope you'll take a moment and consider doing that, and we'll have more for you again soon.